The most expensive sound I've ever heard wasn't a car crash or a diamond breaking. It was the sound of my father's work boot slamming into my $4,000 gaming computer. "You're 22 years old, Riley," he roared at me, his face red with anger. "Real girls are out getting married or finishing nursing school, not wasting their lives in front of screens." He didn't see the dual monitor setup or the professional microphone as work tools. To him, they were just glowing distractions keeping his daughter from becoming normal. My mother stood in the doorway behind him, throwing my suitcases onto the floor. "We're done supporting this boy's hobby," she said coldly. "If you want to live like a child, go live somewhere else." I didn't tell them that the hobby they just kicked across my bedroom floor had earned me $150,000 in brand deals just last month alone. I didn't tell them that my online friends were actually a community of 5 million subscribers who watched my streams every single week. I didn't tell them that major companies paid me more money than Dad made in a year just to mention their products during my videos. I just quietly packed what was left of my damaged equipment, careful not to let them see the tears running down my face. They thought they were teaching me a hard lesson about the real world and responsibility. They had no idea I already owned a piece of that real world they couldn't even imagine. In my house, the rules felt like they came straight from 1950. My brother, Cameron, was considered the family success story. He worked a brutal 60-hour week at a logistics company called Fletcher Freight, coming home every night covered in sweat and grease from the warehouse. That was real work to my parents, the kind of honest labor that built character and deserved respect. Because I stayed in my bedroom with the door locked, wearing a headset and talking to people they couldn't see, I was the family failure. They assumed I was playing silly games and wasting my youth. In reality, I was a top 10 ranked competitive strategy player and a variety streamer with millions of followers across multiple platforms. While my mom was literally screaming through my locked bedroom door, telling me to get a real job and stop embarrassing the family, I was signing a contract with a global energy drink company. The deal was worth more than my father's entire retirement fund. I kept all my finances completely hidden from everyone in my family. I had a separate bank account at a different bank across town. I had a business manager named Philip who handled my contracts and investments. I'd set up a company called Aurora Digital Media to manage all my income and sponsorships. I was planning to tell my family the truth eventually, waiting for the perfect moment. But they didn't give me that chance. I moved into a luxury penthouse apartment downtown the very next day after they kicked me out. The building had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city, a private elevator that opened directly into my apartment, and 24-hour security. I spent $50,000 setting up my dream streaming studio in the spare bedroom, with professional lighting, soundproofing, and the best equipment money could buy. Then I went right back to work, streaming 6 days a week and growing my audience even larger. My viewers knew something had happened because I'd missed 3 days of streams, but I just told them I'd had some family issues to deal with. They were supportive and understanding, sending encouraging messages that meant more to me than my parents' approval ever had. 2 weeks after I moved out, the real world came crashing down on my family in a way they never expected. Cameron's logistics company, Fletcher Freight, was in serious financial trouble. They'd been struggling for months, losing clients to newer companies that understood modern technology and social media marketing. The owner was desperately looking for what he called a digital angel investor, someone with money and online knowledge who could save the company from bankruptcy. They needed a massive cash injection immediately, plus a complete social media overhaul to stay competitive in the current market. Without both of those things, the company would close within 3 months, and Cameron would lose his job along with 50 other employees. My business manager, Philip, called me on a Tuesday afternoon while I was editing a video. "Riley, I've got something interesting," he said. "A local logistics firm is begging for a buyout. They're desperate, offering majority shares for cheap. The company is called Fletcher Freight. Isn't that where your brother works?" I felt my heart start beating faster. This was too perfect to be a coincidence. "What are they asking for?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Philip named a figure that was large but well within what I could afford. I thought for exactly 10 seconds before making my decision. Buy 51% of the shares, I told him. Use the Aurora Digital Media name. Keep my identity completely secret until the board meeting. Philip handled everything perfectly over the next week. He negotiated with Fletcher Freight's owner, an older man who was relieved to have any investor interested at all. The deal was structured so that Aurora Digital Media would own controlling interest in the company, with the power to make all major decisions about operations and staffing. The board meeting to finalize everything was scheduled for the following Monday. I rented a fancy office suite in the nicest building downtown just for this one meeting. I had Philip send formal invitations to all the key people at Fletcher Freight, including my father and brother, who both worked there now. Dad had taken a job at the company a month ago to help Cameron keep his position. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I woke up early and spent 2 hours getting ready, choosing my outfit carefully. I wore a designer blazer that cost $3,000, but underneath I wore my favorite gaming jersey, the one from my first major tournament win. I did my makeup perfectly, pulled my hair back in a professional style, and put on the expensive heels I'd bought but never had a reason to wear. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the confident woman staring back at me. This wasn't the girl my parents had kicked out 2 weeks ago. This was the CEO of a multimedia empire, and today everyone was going to find out. I arrived at the office suite 30 minutes early and had everything set up exactly how I wanted it. There was a long glass conference table with expensive leather chairs around it. I sat in the high-back chair at the head of the table and turned it to face the floor-to-ceiling windows so my back was to the door. Philip stood beside me, going over the final details of the merger documents. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. "You could just stay anonymous and let me handle the meeting." I shook my head. "They need to see my face," I said. "They need to understand exactly who they dismissed." At exactly 9 o'clock, I heard voices in the hallway outside. My father and Cameron walked into the conference room looking nervous and defeated. They were both wearing their nicest suits, the kind you only bring out for funerals and job interviews. Dad's suit was at least 10 years old and didn't fit him quite right anymore. Cameron kept tugging at his tie like it was choking him. They sat down across from my turned chair, not able to see who was sitting in it. The owner of Fletcher Freight sat beside them, looking exhausted and desperate. "We are incredibly grateful for Aurora Digital Media's interest in our company," my father started, his voice shaking slightly. "We've put our entire lives into this business. We just need a leader who understands the modern market and can guide us forward." I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment, enjoying the suspense. Then I slowly spun the chair around to face them. I put my feet up on the glass table, crossing my ankles, the same feet my mother had literally kicked out of her house 2 weeks ago. I folded my hands in my lap and looked directly at my father and brother. Their expressions went through several stages in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, shock, and finally complete disbelief. Cameron's jaw actually dropped open like something from a cartoon. His face went pale white. "Riley," he whispered, like he couldn't trust what his eyes were seeing. "What are you doing here? Are you the secretary or something?" "No, Cameron," I said calmly, sliding the thick merger documents across the glass table toward them. "I'm the CEO and founder of Aurora Digital Media. I'm the video game addict who just bought 51% of your company. And since I'm now the majority shareholder and have full control over operations, I have some thoughts about those comments you made about nursing school." The silence in that room was so complete I could hear the air conditioning humming. Dad's hands were shaking as he picked up the documents and started reading through them. His eyes got wider with each page. The numbers were all there in black and white. My company, my money, my signature on every line. My mother wasn't at the meeting, but she found out within an hour because Dad called her immediately. She showed up at the office building 30 minutes later, bursting into the conference room without knocking. "Riley, sweetheart, there's been some kind of mistake," she said, trying to smile but looking panicked. "Your father just told me some crazy story about you owning a company. That can't be right." I looked at her calmly. "It's completely right, Mom. I've been running Aurora Digital Media for 3 years. I make more in a month than Dad makes in a year. You kicked out a millionaire because you couldn't see past your own old-fashioned ideas about what girls should do." Mom immediately tried to play what I thought of as the family card. "Riley, honey, we were just worried about you. We didn't know you were being successful. If you just told us, we never would have." I held up my hand to stop her. "That's the whole problem, Mom. You didn't want to know. You never asked what I was actually doing. You just assumed that because I was a girl playing video games, I must be wasting my life. You wanted me to fit into your small box of acceptable careers." Well, it turns out that box was way too small for my bank account. Her face crumpled, and she started crying, but I felt nothing. The time for tears had passed. Over the next week, I restructured everything at Fletcher Freight. I brought in my own team of digital marketing experts to completely rebuild their online presence. I hired a social media manager, a 20-year-old woman named Zoe who was brilliant at creating viral content and understanding modern platforms. I updated their ancient computer systems, implemented new logistics software, and created training programs for all the employees. The changes were fast and dramatic. Within 2 weeks, Fletcher Freight had more online visibility than they'd had in 10 years. New clients started calling. Orders increased. The company that had been dying was suddenly thriving again. Everyone was relieved and grateful except my father and brother. I didn't fire Cameron and Dad. That would have been too easy, too quick. Instead, I put Cameron on what corporate people call a performance improvement plan. Basically, he had 90 days to prove he could adapt to the new way of doing things or he'd be let go. His new direct supervisor, Zoe, my 19-year-old female head of social media. Every single day, my brother who thought girls should be nurses had to report to a teenage girl and ask for her approval on his work. I made my father report to her too for every marketing decision, every social media post, every customer interaction that happened online. Watching them struggle with taking orders from a young woman was deeply satisfying. Word spread quickly through our small town. People started recognizing me from my streams and videos. I'd always kept my face partially hidden online, but now I stopped hiding. I did interviews with business magazines about being a young female CEO. I spoke at a local college about careers in digital media. I became the face of my own company instead of hiding behind a username. My subscriber count exploded to 7 million, then 8 million. Brand deals got bigger and bigger. I bought a second property, a beautiful house in the hills. I drove a luxury car. I wore expensive clothes. I lived the life my parents had thought was impossible for someone like me. 6 months after the buyout, I made another discovery that felt like fate. The suburban house my parents lived in, the one where I'd grown up and been kicked out of, was actually owned by a property investment company. My parents had been renting it for the past 5 years, something I'd never known. The investment company was selling off several properties, including theirs. When Philip told me about it, I laughed out loud at the perfect irony. "Buy it," I told him. "Buy the house and every other property they're selling in this area." He did, using one of my subsidiary companies. My parents had no idea their new landlord was actually me until they got the notice in the mail. Mom called me crying when she figured it out. "You're our landlord now. Riley, this is too much. This is cruel." I kept my voice level and professional. "It's not cruel, Mom. It's business. You're good tenants who pay on time. Nothing about your lease will change. You'll just be sending your rent checks to a different company." What I didn't tell her was that the different company was mine, and that every month when they paid rent, they were literally paying me to live in the house they'd thrown me out of. The irony was beautiful. Dad refused to speak to me at all after that, which honestly made family gatherings much more peaceful. Cameron eventually came around after about a year. He apologized, genuinely and completely, for every dismissive comment he'd made about gaming and girls and real work. "I was wrong about everything," he admitted over coffee one day. "I thought I was working so hard, and you were just playing. But you were building an empire while I was just moving boxes. I'm sorry." I accepted his apology because he seemed to mean it. He'd learned humility from having to report to Zoe, who was brilliant and had taught him more about modern business in 6 months than he'd learned in 6 years. I promoted him to a better position and raised his salary. He'd earned it by actually changing. My parents never really apologized, not in any meaningful way. They made excuses and justified their actions and tried to rewrite history so they hadn't been that harsh. "We just wanted what was best for you," Dad would say. "We were trying to motivate you to find a real career," Mom would claim. I stopped arguing with them about it. Some people can't admit when they're wrong, especially to their own children. I focused instead on building my business bigger and better, launching new content creators, investing in gaming tournaments, creating scholarships for young women who wanted to enter technology fields. I turned my pain into purpose and my rejection into motivation. 3 years after being kicked out, I was invited to speak at a major gaming conference in front of 10,000 people. My face was on billboards around the city. My streams regularly hit millions of viewers. Forbes magazine did a feature article on me as one of the top young entrepreneurs in digital media. I stood on that conference stage, looking out at thousands of faces, and told my story. I talked about being dismissed by my family, about proving people wrong, about refusing to fit into boxes other people built for you. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, hundreds of young women came to talk to me, sharing their own stories of being told they couldn't or shouldn't pursue gaming and technology. My parents came to one of my public events once, sneaking in the back and watching from the shadows. I saw them there but didn't acknowledge them during my speech. Afterward, they tried to approach me in the crowd, but I was surrounded by fans and business partners. They stood at a distance, watching me sign autographs and take photos, seeing the person they dismissed being celebrated by thousands of strangers. Mom cried. Dad looked stunned. Cameron, who'd come with them, just looked proud. "That's my sister," I heard him tell someone standing nearby. "She's amazing." At least one member of my family had figured it out. Looking back now, 5 years after that terrible day when Dad's boot hit my computer, I can honestly say I'm grateful it happened. Being kicked out forced me to stop hiding my success and start owning it publicly. It pushed me to grow faster and bigger than I might have otherwise. I didn't need my parents' permission to be successful. I just needed a high-speed internet connection and the courage to play the game better than anyone else. Today, I run a $50 million company, employ 200 people, and inspire millions of young gamers around the world. My family still lives in that suburban house, still paying rent to my property company, still working at the business I saved. Every time they see my face on a billboard or my stream trending with millions of viewers, they're reminded of the day they threw out a millionaire because they couldn't see past their own prejudice. And honestly, that's exactly how it should be. Thank you for watching. Kindly like and subscribe to get more videos from us.